My name is Becca Catan, this is MakingLARP, and I died at the Gathering 2014. A day-by-day accounting of what happened at the Gathering. I apologise now for my voice. It's already a couple of days past the event and I didn't want to leave it much longer. I will tell you all about how I broke it on the Sunday night. So first things first, as always, a huge thanks to Steve, who drives myself and Emma to the event. We went down first thing Friday morning and got there around lunchtime. Timing is normally at about 5 o'clock, so we were able to get there, get all the tent up, go get some shopping, and generally have a little bit of time hanging out with all our friends out of character before the event started properly, which makes a nice change. It means we're not rushing around. Once timing happened, we were kind of briefed about the plan for the event. I believe I mentioned in our last video that we, in character, went to Sunset, which was a village just on the outskirts of the unliving city of Alcafar. Now, our faction as the Lions really hates unliving, which is a point that's going to get brought up quite a few times over the course of this video. So we went there with the plan of kicking in as many unliving as we could. I know certainly other factions were there hoping to power up the particular unliving ancestors, etc., that they followed. The first major event for myself of the Gathering was a ritual for one of the other company members, Hadari, who is the Lions faction High Ritualist. So he was getting a ritual done on himself, he wasn't performing the ritual. Unfortunately, he had the 7 o'clock on a Friday slot, which meant he was the very first ritual of the day, and given timing only happens at 5, meant he had very limited time for doing things like putting in the appropriate paperwork, which all has to be done, I see. I believe it's supposed to be like an hour before your ritual, and generally getting everything sorted, because unfortunately there are people that had said they were going to be part of the ritual that weren't in character yet and weren't even on site. And as well, having spoken to the Watchers, who are the IC people that oversee the rituals, what he was originally planning for was told it was way too much, and if he did it he would probably kill the whole ritual team. So we did the ritual and that was a lot of fun. Well, the ritualist summoned in a knowledge elemental. Basically, Hadari wanted to be taught how to become better at utilising elemental contributors in his ritual circles. He wanted to be better at doing rituals involving elementals. The original plan was to do the core 3. As I said, the Watchers said, no. And from the result of the ritual, became officially titled as a Professor of Elementalism. After the ritual, I think most of us bimbled back to camp. I had a fun game this weekend which was called Hit the Encounters Guild Until Someone Tells Me What's Going On. I wasn't allowed to play this game properly, but it is mostly what I wanted to do. Pretty much every available opportunity, as Lions we're supposed to not go out in a group less than 5, I tried to organise people to go to the Encounters Guild with me, because there was a huge plotline involving the ancestral groves, which I believe I mentioned in the last episode. The information we were given at the time of the last episode was wrong. Or in fact, wasn't wrong. The Encounters Guild told us it was wrong, and so we went moving on based on different information, and it turned out we still had to do some of the things that were told to us by the original person. So I assume actually what happened is it all got very jarbled in communication. About a year ago, we were all given cuttings from the Tree of Incantation, and each faction planted a grove somewhere on their own lands. Apparently we were all supposed to go visit them and do acts of faith in front of our trees, and no one did, because no one actually explained what the hell was going on with that. Halfway through last event, I spoke to someone who was like, "Rah, you need to go do this." And what they told us was that these trees were then forming a grove, and that there would be a number of trees in our grove, somewhere between 6 and 12. and that this would need for us to go and do acts of faith to link those empty trees with some of our ancestors. That's not actually true. In the end, I went with Ravenfire to the Encounters Guild and we talked it over with people, and then got information that was also wrong, because they went, no, all your ancestors have trees. Yes, you should go have a look at them. You know, it'll provide you lots of useful information. We'd love to come with you because we'd love to learn some more about the lion's ancestors and how the groves works. Yeah, you probably should keep an eye out and get someone as a tracker to go with you, because there has been some things going on in the other groves, blah, 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 blah. So, whilst I was like, yes, I should organise people to go down and things like that, it then got kind of moved down the priority list when we're dealing with hordes of unliving and things like that. One of the big things that happened on the Friday night was the opening ceremonies, which was actually due to start pretty much the same time as our ritual, but got pushed back for reasons. So we came straight out of the ritual circle and joined up with the lions, who ended up in a massive fight. Saturday, earlier on in the day, after we'd had a chat with the representatives of White Reaver, who is a ancestor of killing all the unliving in the face, but that has a really bad reputation because for most of the time he's a sword, and his preferred method of killing people in the face is turning up in the hands of light incanters and then saying them to die, whilst taking out as many unliving as possible, not necessarily taking into account things like their ability to breathe in wherever they're taking them. So yes, White Reaver came and spoke to us and went, hey, I have a plan. Let's all go to the plains of unlife. I will protect you, and we can kill some unliving in the face. And the Queen went, yay, killing unliving in the face, that's the bestest. And so basically, White Reaver was supposed to have gone to the three good factions that have appropriate stances on unliving, which was ourselves as the kind of shining light of no unliving, bad times. And I believe the dragons and the griffins. So we'd kind of vaguely arranged that Friday night. Saturday, people went down. White Reaver said, no, you can't go to the Queen, who basically, part of being one of the crowns slash NPCs is you have a icy link to Adrea, and he was like, hey, no, I'm not taking you. Did, however, take one of the high-ups of the Griffins, who was in a similar situation, which put her out a lot, but he had basically sacrificed his link to Adrea to do so. In the end, it ended up being that one guy from the Griffins, one dragon, and everyone else was a lion. I didn't go on the linear because in character I thought it was a suicide mission, and I wasn't willing to do that. I didn't really trust White Reaver that much. But yes, the faction went off and they went and kicked in some unliving. At some point White Reaver disappeared, at which point anyone that died on the plains after that got spat back out to the main field of the marketplace with some sort of necromantic curse on them. But luckily most people survived the trip. I believe there's only one person died. The other big thing on Saturday, I've got to say, I'm not even sure at which point it happened. There were a couple of big crunchy fights that did happen. Quite a few other lions died, including 2 members of the company, which were Freya and Reggie. We gave them both a big send-off on the evening, and that did 4 lays to rest rites that evening. The 2 company members, the free blade that had died at the linear, at least I think he died at the White River battle, and some random unknown that we never identified, so he got a send-off as the unknown lion, and got a lot of kind of fallen soldier sort of things in a unknown soldier sort of way. Sunday was the day of drama and woe. I'm not sure off the top of my head whether the monstering that we did was sometime Saturday during the day or Sunday during the day, but one of the two I also went off and did a monster role with Emma and one of our friends Amy. We did a talkie where we were nightmare creatures that had been created with the nightmare of what happens if the Hearts never had a civil war with the Lions. The basic gist of the history is that 20 years ago, as of that event, the head of the Lions, who at the time the Lions were all living in Albion, was the lover of a demon, and she was corrupting him, and at some point the faction split into two sides. We lost. I don't really know the details, but I do know that the king was killed. So whether it was just the people that arranged it then got done in for treason, not a huge amount of details. It was 20 years ago and I've only been playing for 4. But our brief was that the council had in fact separated him from Roxanne, who was his lover and a demon, and mind healed him, so he was no longer crazy, and so the civil war never happened. In real time, the Lions split into 2 groups and had an honour battle, which then resulted in the Lions losing. The Lions lost, but they got to keep the name, and basically that was then what led them in the travels. The Hearts kept the original land, but they changed their name, and since 20 years have passed, most people have kind of moved on, other than some occasional ribbing. So yes, we had quite a lot of fun playing as people that were they were absolutely adamant that the Hearts will remember things wrong. As of when we left, the Hearts believed there'd been some terrible transport and accident, and we'd come across from another dimension. They hadn't worked out that we were some sort of nightmare creatures, and that actually everything we believed was nonsense. And whilst we absolutely 100% believed it, if, say, we had been put to sleep as nightmare creatures, we would have just disappeared because we were already nightmares. Things like that. I was already signed up to be in a ritual, which Hadari was running, and for Briar Rose, who is awesome, and our captain of the camp, and Archer, and all sorts of good, awesome things. And this one had been planned out for ages, and was half about getting us some power-ups, but mostly about some plot wibbling. Basically, she had originally been an ice elemental. Now, I mentioned about Hadari being really good with elementalism now, and the University of Pattern Perfection, who were a long-running NPC bad guys to the Healers Guild, which I believe they finally defeated the last one some point this weekend. I can't remember if the fight was scheduled for Saturday or Sunday, but the University of Pattern Perfection took her pattern, took the pattern of a Fae, jumbled them all together. So she ended up with an ice elemental in a Fae body, and he ended up as a Fae in an ice elemental body. So we went and did a ritual to switch them back, and if we could get some cool stuff for being an ice elemental, great. Unfortunately, she didn't get any extra bonuses, but she did get a really, really high dismiss level, which is awesome. After the ritual, the big Lions event was that we agreed to hold a trial that we really weren't happy about happening. I probably have mentioned it in a previous video, as it was a big kind of game-wide event. Last year, a ritual team blew themselves up, I believe by asking for too much and generally being a not good ritual team. Members of the IC family of some of the people involved in the ritual circle murdered one of the watchers in retaliation, as they believed that the watchers should have advised them better, or otherwise made sure that they didn't all die. As Lions, we agreed to hold the trial on our faction camp, as we were the only group that were willing to do so. However, holding that trial, because of who was there and who had actually said they wanted to be there watching, etc., meant that for the period of time of the trial, Lions had to give up that their faction was under Lions law, and instead the faction would be under common law, which allows for unliving to continue existing. To be fair, Lion's Law does not state that we just go around murdering unliving. They are allowed to exist. They're just not people, and we won't take any action for people killing them. So we don't punish people that choose to do so. And any unliving that chooses to enter the lion's land, knowing that that's a rule, no one can get upset if something happens to them, because people don't like unliving. So we agreed that for the duration of the trial, so that unliving could come and go and watch the trial. We did, of course, have certain people organise a wedge for as soon as the Malicious Guild left the land, because we checked that it became Lion's Law when they left. If any unliving stayed behind, we are welcome to dismiss them because they're on Lion's land. So we had wedges and stuff formed up for exactly waiting for when the trial finished. I didn't actually watch the trial because we were like rah unliving. It was actually one of the many opportunities I gave people to go and visit the groves with me that nobody took. I might have been getting quite pissed off by that point. And it was also Hidari's birthday, so we tried to throw a little celebration and do some fun stuff. Unfortunately, the group that had their IC tent next to ours, after having been informed that we were having a party, decided to go out and hire a bard to play in their tent really loudly next door, which we found a little bit rude. You know, you think at least say something, even if you don't want to full on bring a bard to somebody else's birthday party as maybe a present. You could at least maybe organise so there wasn't a scheduling conflict. So we had a little bit of a bard off with Hidari and the company singing some less than PG songs and other things, and generally being loud back at them, because we're not petty at all. When all the visitors had left and the trial was concluded, we held a muster. In walks Terrell, who is not only one of our rich list, but the kind of main guy for dealing with our groves of incantation. And he goes, right, the Incanted Guild just told me, if you do not go and sort out this grove thing right now, there is a possibility of everyone losing access to ancestors and incantation. At which point, after having been quite polite about things, trying repeatedly to organise stuff, and being ignored, I might have shouted down the entire faction and basically said, right, when all the incanters lose their power and all your paladins die because no one can heal them, told you so. So that was quite fun, and after a bit of grumbling, we did in fact get most of the faction down to the Incanters Guild to do little rites for their ancestors. We had been warned by the Incanters Guild that there was quite a queue and that we could go off and go to our own groves, but I just couldn't get anything organised. At this point I was like, I've been trying to organise this since before we even got here, and no one's listening to me and no one took it seriously. I am grabbing the following people. We are going to go make sure Morby is alright. And basically went down to the shrine at the Incanters Guild and down some drinks. And by the time that we were sat there finding out what was going on and waiting for our turn, a good chunk of the faction had turned up. So shouting at people had worked, even if it has cost me my voice probably for the next week. So I went to bed not long after having done that, quite upset, and woke up the following morning still angry, which is always a good start. By the time I'd had some breakfast and stuff, I was alright. I was just going, ancestors, Mistress Hollow is not actually that sympathetic to the needs of ancestors. Ancestors are a thing that exist. And yes, occasionally they need bothering and poking to get to do what you need them to do. And yes, you should be respectful of them. But it is a lot like worshipping a floorboard or the postman. You know, there's a difference between respect and worship. She happened to worship Morbia in a, well, I accept that you are a reasonable person for me to send my power to, rather than all ancestors, which include the unliving ones and other ones I don't like. People had actually gone over to the Lion's Grove, and they found out some information, which was basically everyone that went and did a right thing at the Incanters Guild, your ancestors are fine. Now let's do all the rest of them. Also, here's some other random information we got from looking at trees. But it was good, and people actually said, and quite a few people came up to me on the Monday and told me about how, they'd had revelations about their ancestors, or they'd had visions, or they'd found out information. And before you know it, it was time for the final battle of the weekend. Of the company, only myself and Sarah, who plays Arya, took the field. Everyone else was either not out of bed or too broken or non-calm, which is entirely fair. But this, of course, does get on to me dying in the final battle. I haven't really touched on the things with the shrines. Basically, as part of the set dressing, there were these shrines. And if you did right, you could shunt around. Well, certainly one shrine you could do this. You could shunt around power on the planes of unlife. At the moment, and part of the plot reason whilst we're there, is there's a massive war going on the planes of unlife between Dracos and Satoon. So we actually struck a deal with White Reaver. White Reaver, the ancestor, was able to use that power and shunt it off to the planes of death. They return that power, that energy, whatever you want to call it, to the cycle, and therefore it can go from a cycle of life to death, life to death. Whereas the living takes things out of the cycle, which is part of why we disagree with it, because things aren't then getting reborn. So we went and did a rite on the statue to shunt some power over to White Reaver, mostly from Dracos, because Dracos has the most power. So we all started doing this rite, and that's when Dracos and his minions turned up. And pretty much from the moment they turned up, we were out of power, because things were constantly hitting us with decays, fatals, disease, which is less of an issue, but it means that if someone is hit whilst they're diseased, you have to remove the disease first. So a lot of times when we would normally just let someone wait out the disease if they were okay, because we were in the middle of battle, you had to cure it, because otherwise you couldn't heal them. And so a lot of people's power was being taken, removing these effects so that people could be healed. For example, I, as an awakened human with improved ritual of peace, got fataled in the arm. My arm was only ever going to go to 0. Doesn't matter how many times people hit it, but the fact they put a fatal on it meant my pattern was still unravelling and I would still die within 10 minutes. I got that healed up. We finished off the rite, and then we went and joined the battle. Myself and Arya and Carrie, we all went to basically pick people up, do healing, things like that. So I pretty much blasted all of my power on removing decays, because I didn't want healers using their power for that they could be using for actual healing. I used up all my removed disease herbs. In fact, the last one I used, Carrie had been hit with removed disease. I was removing it, at which point we got surrounded by enemies. We got separated from the group. She got knocked unconscious. Luckily they hadn't put on a second effect, so I just finished removing the disease, and I got hit in the back with a artifact decay. If it had just been an artifact, wouldn't have died, but the decay, with at that point most of the faction being completely out of healing and us all being separated from the group, the effects of the decay is it wastes your pattern. So it wasn't covered under improved ritual of peace. I still would have died from it. You have 5 minutes. By the time a ref came and checked on me, we went, yeah, it's been about 3 minutes. And no one got to me in time. And so I got wasted. And I got brought back to the Lions. And because I was the first corpse there, I got the big throne. I got to sit in the throne. I had the lovely and adorable Lenny and Leo put on top of me. And because I was wearing my big witch's hat, I got to do that. And therefore get to watch all the people's reactions whilst mostly looking like I was dead. As I mentioned, most of the company were broken, so unfortunately none of them were IC to come and have reactions, but it was really cool having reaction rest of faction. Things like the Queen, who I have a long standing issue with, in that I really felt as Mistress Hollow that she absolutely despised the entire company. And then over the last couple of events she started being nice, and it was actually more creepy that she was being nice suddenly for no reason than when I thought she was upset with us for no reason. So she actually apologised for being a dick. And I was like, fair. I was being a dick back. So he apologised for the wow ancestor stuff, and people basically talked about, yes, no one listened to me, but I was always unquestionably doing stuff to help the Lions, and yes, occasionally grumpy and irritatingly practical and all the kind of stuff that I'd hoped to get across as a character, because it's based on the Discord Witches. They are annoyingly practical about this sort of thing. And I was glad a lot of people got across and thank yous for things, and that was really nice. And I also got to listen into the similar things for the other two dead people. My main kind of low point from coming back to battle is once obviously we dropped out of character and started speaking to the rest of the company, and it turns out everyone that had stayed behind was having a really shitty time and had spent the time bitching about the various things that had been upsetting that weekend, and considering whether moving the group to another faction was a option that they wanted to take. It looks like cooler heads have prevailed, and a few days on everyone's kind of like, nah, that's alright, and we'll deal with it XYZ ways. I'm not going to go into any more details, as they'll be dealt with through official channels or IC stabbings as and when. But it was kind of shitty to come back having just died to learn that actually everyone else been having a really shit event because of the actions of other people. Whereas I, as much as I was pissed off in character, actually was having a pretty good event because I enjoyed the emotional side of it. That was odd, and so I've had a character concept in mind for a long time with my next character. I think I actually bought some of the leather for a costume 2 gatherings ago, so I've had the concept in place for a while. I was actually more excited about getting to play her finally than I was upset about Mistress Hollow. I'd got to a point where there was nothing currently as a goal for what she wanted. I'm sure there would have been things that I would have then had a new goal of in time, but it felt like each year I had a goal. So the first year was to get Light Incantation, the second year was to get Awakened Human, and obviously before that it was basically like working out what the hell I wanted to do with the character. She was at a point where there was no loose ends, there was nothing that she was aiming for but didn't get, so it didn't feel bad. The next event is going to be in October, which I already booked a hotel for, because October. I do not understand this camping in October thing. I don't understand camping in March that well, so hotels all the way. So I'm going to get booked up for that in the next few days when I get paid, and then start frantically making costumes. Overall, I actually had a really good event, and always shout outs go to the post-event carvery crew. A bunch of us piling over to the nearest Toby carvery, filling ourselves with all the vegetables we have not seen for several days, and getting to froth and de-stress and come up with ideas for next characters and where everyone wants to go. Any thoughts or comments on this? Any thoughts or comments on your own experience with the LT, how your own gathering went, or the things that I've said? Please do put in the comments box below. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We have a Facebook group, though it's not been used in a while. So any feedback appreciated. Bye.